Hi, this is John Hilbrand. Today I'm going to talk about making this mini cutting board. It's kind of a unique cutting board and hard to find, so it's a very sellable item, but also because of its size, it's rather inexpensive to build, and I've also designed it to not take too much time to build. So it's in a very unique position to be very sellable. So let's talk about why I decided to make it this size. So the when I'm making a single sandwich, I wanted it bigger than a piece of bread. So a piece of bread is about this high, but it's a little bit shorter. So it fits in normal sandwich making, but it also will fit a single onion, a single tomato, a lime if you're next to your bar, if you decide to have this next to your bar. And that's a lot different than the huge cutting board that we'll use for roast or when we're cutting, you know, a lot of slices of something for food preparation. So this one stays on your counter, whereas that one gets dirty, gets put away, and this one, just stays here. And also, it's a lot easier to clean. So it's a very usable cutting board. All my friends who saw it wanted one, so I had this family that wanted one. I had to make about 20 of these to satisfy everybody. So I got very industrial in the making of these, and this became a big Christmas present. So it's cute in that it's basically two boards that are laminated together, and then a third, height of a 1.5 inch cube foot. It got a nice little height on it, and the height is kind of important because you can go over the edge without touching something. It keeps the food away from the counter. And when it's small, it kind of needs to be raised because if it's low, things fall off a lot easier. And so all of this is designed together to be a very usable cutting board that can stay on your counter. And I think that I met those design criteria. The design of it is chosen to be maple because this is the best surface for cutting on. It has the right amount of give to your knife without dulling it. Harder surfaces dull your knife, and also it's food safe. Maple is a very food safe wood. So all of that is worked together to be the right choice there. I chose tigered maple. So you don't actually buy this as tigered maple. You just go to the Home Depot and you look through their boards and you find one that is tigered. So tigered maple just basically has tigered lines through it. There's also something called bird's eye maple, where it kind of has a little eye that kind of looks like it's squinting and has a flare. So there's different effects that maple does in its natural growth. Tigered maple is in 5% of the wood, so 1 out of 20 boards. And so that's what you'll about see. So if there's 20 boards in Home Depot, you'll probably find one tigered, and you'll be able to choose this board. What you'll do is you'll cut it at 7.5 inches with your chop saw. And so the width is left alone, but the length is cut at 7.5 inches. We don't have to be perfect because I'm going to recut these after they're glued. And that's just to get rid of the extra glue, but also to make them perfectly even and save some sanding time. I got a little industrial here, so maybe I started with sanding and realized it would be faster to cut them. So basically we put it through the saw once they're, let's actually say about gluing. So I use tight bound 3 and put the glue down very evenly on it, get it all the way to every edge and every corner, all the way through. So use your finger and just tight bound 3 all the way across it. Now when we're clamping them together, we want the pretty side on the top, but we also want it to curve down on the top, the grain on the end to curve down, and the bottom curve up so that it'll resist warping. So, and then we're going to put a clamp in every corner so that we get it clamped down. Now I chose to use a bar clamp, and these bar clamps are interesting. They created essentially a table, and it kind of was cool that way. They just kind of stand there on their own. I ended up using quite a bit of pressure. Originally mine wasn't quite, probably had a little bit of warp between the two boards and had to squeeze it extra tight, but clamping, I found that I clamped it a little tighter than they say to, because one of them just wasn't quite joined at a corner. So just need a little extra pressure. So they say not to starve the joint, so you don't want to, give it over tighten like you might an auto tool, but you do want some good pressure to get it to flatten down. Using tight bound 3 glue is a good waterproof glue, and you'll want something that's waterproof because this is exposed to moisture. All right, so good glue smeared all the way to the edge, good clamping pressure. I would do these in the morning and in the evening when I came home from work, but it's only like a few minutes to get this clamped up, so it'd just be on the way out to the car. I'd glue one, I'd take one out, put another one in, and wipe my finger off, go off to work, come back home, do another one just before bed. So once I got them all glued together, I had, while they were, before they dried, I wiped my edges of excess glue, but that's just so that we don't have this huge bumpiness when I put it through the saw. I want it to be pretty flat, but it's not perfect because there is a little bit of raise that I'm going to cut off. So we're going to cut that extra glue off and get it perfectly flush. And so table saw fence right here. This one, we're just going to push it through and we're going to get a nice cut that's nice and smooth. Now that nice smooth cut goes against the fence, and it'll create a parallel on this side. So we're going to actually get them nice and squared up again. So this will cut a nice straight cut. And we're just whisper cutting it, so we're not really pulling too much length off of it, just enough to get it a little smoother. On these cuts, I chose to use my drop saw again. So basically just enough to whisper cut it, because so when this is against the back of the cutter, or the front of the cutter I should say, when it cuts down, it's going to make a nice perpendicular cut. Go around to the other side, we're going to get a nice perpendicular cut. And again, just a whisper. It's so much faster when you cut the edges rather than trying to sand it. So now we've got a nice blank that's 2 thicknesses. We're going to route the top. So routing the top, we're going to use a 3/4 inch round over, and we clamp a corner really nice down to the table, because when you're using a router, you want 2 hands on it. You want to put it down flat and then come into the wood and go across very smoothly. There's no tipping, because tipping causes it to get a weird cut, and you always go past your corner, okay, without tipping it. So we're going it past, so we have more pressure on the hand on this side, so that we can go past a little bit without it tipping down, okay? So nice and straight. We don't round our corner. We do again this way, and moving our clamps around as we work, because we can only hold it from one corner all the way across. So now we've rounded it over. Now we're going to do some sanding. Now the edge takes a little bit more sanding than anywhere else. So we'll start with an 80 grit on a vibration sander, and we'll just get it nice and smooth. And then we'll go down to, on the top, we'll probably start with 120, and we'll use the 120 around the sides as well, and on the bottom. Making the feet, before we screw them on, they're 1.5 inch cubes. I found the cubes to be cuter than circles. I experimented with circles and making little donuts with a hole saw, and I didn't like it. I like the cubes. I think it looks a little more mission style. I think it just looks more, it just fits into our southwestern house better than with rounded feet. All right, so we just rounded the corners, but they're not so rounded that it becomes a circle. So we're just rounding the corners with the sander. And then we're going to, once we got all of our feet done, so I probably had 30 feet or something there, so quite a few. And I would find some that looks best with this particular board, and I'd kind of match the grain. I kind of wanted it to look like it was part of the one hewed piece of wood, if I could. So basically I'll use a template to position my hole in the blank, and we'll drill a starter hole, and then we drill it with a stop gauge and for our screw. And then in the top one, where the screw hole is a little bit bigger, because we want the screw to be able to float without the head going through, obviously. But we wanted it to be able to go through so it'll pull tight. So we don't want it to thread in the top one, we just want it to thread in the bottom one and to pull it tight with the head. And we also have glue under there too. So the hole at the top is also recessed. So we buy these recessed bits and we recess the hole. They cut pretty well. I experimented with a star recessor and it didn't work very well. So you actually want the drill cutter. It took too long with the star shaped one. All right, so recess the hole because we don't want the screw to drag on our countertop and scratch it. So that would be bad. All your friends would be mad at you. As far as the screw type, I chose to use deck screws because they're waterproof. We could also go to stainless steel screws because they're even more waterproof. So whichever you choose, what your budget is at. Okay. So you'll see that I use tung oil in my video. After it's sanded, I found mineral oil to be better than the tung oil. Tung oil had a little bit of shine to it, like a urethane, but it was speckly, and it just didn't look very even. So this tung oil that I got was with Minwax. It was called for butcher block, and you do want something that's food safe, so you want either that. You can't just pick up tung oil, or this mineral oil. So this isn't the same mineral oil that you might get at the hardware store. It's in the medical department. Notice it says lubricant laxative. But so trace elements of something in the wood, either the wood itself or the finish, can get into your food. So it's okay with a little bit of mineral oil. It won't make you get the runs, but we don't want it to be poison. So this is a good choice, and this is from Walmart. This is Equate brand, $4, cheap. I think that's a good choice for finish. It left a very deeper finish, and you may have to coat it more often than once to make it look, have a deeper color. But it looks really good. This one looks pretty much the way it has looked for the last year, so I haven't coated it again. If you use like vegetable oil, it would go rancid. So even though that's food safe, wouldn't be a good choice. So definitely stay with, what everybody is recommending. Don't go off on your own and choose poorly. Someone will end up with something. Another thing, you'll see this is very close to having a knot. If you have a knot, don't choose it or don't use it in the board, because that knot gets cracks in it, and we don't want to have cracks in our cutting board that will create harbors for bacteria. Okay, so there's a lot of thought that goes into making something that's food safe and proper for your food. Wood choice, what the finish will look like, that it's not permeable, and substance like that. All right, so I think this is a really good board to sell. I think it's a really good board to keep, or a really good board to keep for yourself, because it's very usable. Just for a little aside, my uncle loved it so much, he took it back to me and told me I didn't write, anything on it. So, I wrote, love you, Uncle Paul, and, on the bottom of the board. But you can write something on the bottom of these. They're not really seen unless someone flips them over. And I think a made by and then your name would make a lot of sense too. All right, so this has been John Hilbrands, trying to get to that 1,000 subscribers. If you give me a like and subscribe, I appreciate that, and good luck on your project.